Arabia, a land where reptiles rule. 300 million years of evolution have created the ultimate desert survivors. They're masters of saving energy, but can strike in an instant. They can make a small meal last a long time. Each creature has a way to cope with extremes. They change their behavior as the sun changes position in the sky. Here, the heat of the desert is no match for life in cold blood. It sometimes feels like mammals rule the world. There are well over 5,000 species, colonizing every corner of the globe. But in Arabia, it's a different story. At first light, a nocturnal spiny mouse is having one last forage before returning to his den. But it lives in a land where reptiles rule. A perfectly honed predator, the Clifford's diadem snake, chooses early morning to hunt. The 2-meter diadem has large eyes and chemical detection to track the mouse down, even in the dim morning light. Tight squeeze is all it takes. Each time the mouse exhales, the embrace tightens. The victim suffocates. The bones of the diadem's skull are loosely attached with rubbery ligaments, so they can expand and move independently to walk the prey through the jaws. Reptiles are ectotherms and save energy by not heating their bodies internally, like a mammal does. It's one of the secrets of their enduring success. Snakes can survive on just 50% of their body weight in food each year. The mouse meal could keep the diadem going for months. In a land where resources are scarce, cold-blooded creatures have the upper hand. Little wonder they thrive in the deserts of the Arabian Peninsula. The peninsula covers 3.1 million square kilometers. Its interior is mostly desert, bordered by mountains on the east and west, and surrounded by warm tropical seas. Among the mountain ranges, valleys offer cooler conditions where vegetation can grow. The habitats are diverse, but reptiles have evolved to exploit them all. It's 6 a.m. in the hot, dry Arabian interior. The temperature is already 26 degrees Celsius. It looks barren and is almost devoid of water. But the harsh terrain is teeming with life. One 172 species of reptile live in Arabia. More than half are found here and nowhere else in the world. One of the biggest families, with 17 species, is the agamids. Like all reptiles, they start their day basking in the sun to warm up. Reptiles are like living solar panels, absorbing the sun's heat and using it as an energy source to power their bodies. Being ectotherms, or cold-blooded, doesn't mean reptiles are cold. It means they cannot regulate their temperature internally. Instead, they warm and cool their bodies using the environment around them. The toad-headed agama is specialized in making his living on the rolling sand dunes of the desert. Every morning he basks in the sun. It's vital if he wants enough energy to hunt. But there's no cover on the dunes. He's exposed. And even his perfect camouflage can't protect him from eyes in the skies. The eagle has impeccable vision. It's capable of spotting a desert hare from 3 kilometers away. Luckily, the agama has a disappearing act. Fast vibrations, the so-called shimmy burial, throws up enough grains of sand to cover his body. For the little lizard, it's dangerous to be out in the open. But the biggest of the agamids seems a lot less concerned as he begins his day. At 70 centimeters long, the dhub is the armored tank of the agamid world. He spent the night in a den underground and now joins the sunbathers. His body is armored with tightly packed scales made of keratin, like fingernails. Some are even further reinforced by bony structures called osteoderms. Reptiles were the first animals to develop scaly skin. This breakthrough gave them an evolutionary edge. It made them waterproof meaning they could be the first large creatures to live on land. Keeping water out is as important as keeping water in. Even Arabia's sun doesn't dry them out. The dhub has a variety of scale shapes and sizes, including spiny bands on its tail that provide even more protection, something it might need. This is a monitor lizard, close cousin of the infamous Komodo dragon, and the undisputed king of the sand dunes. At up to 1.3 meters long, it's the largest and most aggressive lizard in Arabia. But during early mornings, while the sun's still weak, all reptiles are taking things slow. Reptiles have colonized all the habitats of Arabia, even the sea itself. But as the sun rises over the waves, things seem to have gone awry for a pair of marine inhabitants. Two Gulf sea snakes are stuck in the rock pools. These are among the most venomous animals on Earth, with the power to kill creatures many times their own size. But now they're in trouble. At high tide, they were hunting close to the coast, but the water levels receded. Now they're trapped, stranded in rock pools until the next high tide. Sea snakes originally evolved on land, but 6 million years of evolution have adapted them to a life beneath the waves. Like all reptiles, they must breathe air, but can hold their breath for several hours, thanks to massively elongated lungs that stretch almost the entire length of their bodies. Their flattened bodies turn their tails into paddles to help them swim. Most snakes have broad scales on their bellies for grip. Sea snakes sacrifice these for streamlining and are covered in smaller fish-like scales. They're the reptilian equivalent of whales and dolphins. Terrestrial animals so well adapted to the seas that they can no longer function on land. Without the ability to move quickly across the sand or strike at passing prey, they could starve or find themselves at the mercy of opportunistic predators. They have no choice but to wait for the tide to turn and hope the water gets to them before the gulls do. By 9 a.m., it's over 37 degrees. At this temperature, reptiles are in their prime. The monitor is now turbocharged by the sun. As his body temperature increases, so does the efficiency of his senses. As well as excellent hearing and eyesight, his long forked tongue flicks out to collect minute scent particles in the air. Each prong of the fork works independently. It can tell which side the strongest scent is coming from, giving it directional smell. He's on the trail of the dhub. But the dhub sees it coming. He's nicknamed the spiny-tailed lizard for a reason. He can inflate his body to wedge himself into the hole, with his tail sideways to lock him in. A spiny barricade that's too much for most predators to bother with. But the monitor has picked up a different scent. This is a rare find in the desert. An unguarded quail nest. But just when he's ready for breakfast, something else catches his eye. There's only one thing that threatens a monitor lizard, and that's another one. But the second lizard is smaller. It flattens itself against the dune, hoping to go unnoticed. Monitor lizards are all about personal space and won't hesitate to fight over resources. The eggs can wait. The threat's too much for the smaller one. Honor defended, the bigger lizard can go back to breakfast. Many of Arabia's reptiles are territorial. Some literally turn blue at the sight of an intruder. There are no prizes for guessing how the blue-headed agama got its name. The males position themselves on prominent lookouts where they can watch over their territories. They're looking for females. When they spot one, they turn on the charm by doing push-ups until they're blue in the face. The color tones down at other times, but when they breed, they crank it up. Each male tries to intimidate its rivals by looking the fittest and most colorful. Changing skin color is a trick that some agamids share with a peculiar cousin found in the dense vegetation of the southern coast. There are about 200 species of chameleons spread throughout the tropics. But the Arabian chameleon is an endemic found here and nowhere else. One thing all chameleons have in common is their famous ability to change color. As this Arabian chameleon stalks through the branches, pigmented layers of skin, rich in expandable color cells, move over one another to change the way they reflect light, effectively enabling him to change his color. His varied wardrobe can be used for many purposes. to stand out and communicate with other chameleons, to blend in and go unseen by his insect prey, or to lighten or darken his color to reflect or absorb the sun to help with temperature control. His feet are unlike any other reptiles. He has the typical 5 toes, but they're fused into 2 bunches, making them look a bit like mittens. They're perfect for maintaining a grip on the branches. His arboreal life is further stabilized with a long prehensile tail. A lot of the comical chameleon's character comes from its extraordinary eyes. The tiny pinpricks between its eyelids can be rotated independently, enabling it to scan through 360 degrees. Its brain can interpret the information from each. It's like watching 2 different movies at the same time. Back out on the sand dunes, the mercury is climbing. The toad-headed agama lifts himself standing on tiptoes. This allows cooling air to circulate around his body and minimizes contact with the hot sand. The dhub spent the cooler hours of the morning using his chisel-shaped teeth to clip tough desert vegetation. But time's running out for his veggie brunch. By late morning, the air temperature can soar to a scalding 49 degrees. But the baked sand is hotter. Nearly 64 degrees to the touch. Too hot for reptiles. This heat compromises their endurance. Even the desert-dwelling dhub retreats to the shade of his burrow for an afternoon siesta. Underground, the humidity can stay as high as 80%, making it a comfortable retreat, even on the hottest of days. Several dhubs share the system of tunnels, which can be over 10 meters long. They also tolerate squatters like beetles, geckos, and even birds. Because sand burrows often collapse, they dig on the gravel plains that run under the sand for stronger structural support. The colony of lizards will use the same burrow for many years. This lush green seems a world away from the sandy desert. A rare oasis created by a natural spring and rain. Here, vegetation shades animals from the burning sun. Trees provide shelter, but also cover for some deadly hunters. Orb weaver spiders get their name from the circular or spiral shape of their webs. Every morning they build their webs, but they're for one-time use only. The spider will eat the threads at the end of the day and start again tomorrow. It's a 1 meter long, strong, almost invisible trap. The sticky threads will snare any insects that pass too close. To stop the prey from struggling and damaging the web, or the spider, it's injected with paralyzing venom and wrapped in a package of silk. The venom contains enzymes that also slowly break down the fly's body tissue. Eventually, the contents will be a nutritious soup that the spider can drink. Despite its 10-centimeter leg span, the hunter can become the hunted. The quirky chameleon is a surprisingly skillful hunter. As it stalks, it rocks gently, mimicking branches blowing in the breeze, making itself invisible to its prey. When it spots a potential meal, its wandering eyes both focus forwards for precise depth perception. Once in strike range, it can deploy its weapon. The tongue is twice as long as its body and tipped with a ball of muscle that can turn itself into a big suction cup. When unleashed, it accelerates as fast as a car doing 0 to 100 in 1/100th of a second. Unlike the reptiles in the desert, the Arabian chameleon can stay active throughout the day. The vegetation here acts as a moisture trap between the mountains and the sea, creating a microclimate that stays at a fairly constant 32 degrees year-round. On the other side of the mountains, it's dry and very hot. Mid-afternoon can peak at over 50 degrees. Animals must retreat, leaving the desert seemingly empty. The boulders provide some shady cover for a varied community of different geckos. There are 28 species in Arabia, making them the most numerous reptile family. Most geckos have tiny hair-like structures on their toes that act like Velcro, helping them climb steep surfaces. The sticky pads are especially pronounced in the fan-footed gecko. Like most geckos, it's a creature of the night with large, sensitive eyes. Because they're so sensitive to light, their pupils must contract a few hundredths of their original size during the day to avoid damage from sunlight. But not semaphore geckos. They're day active and don't need to see in the dark. Their pupils are large and round by day. They're called semaphore geckos because unlike other species that communicate with sound, they communicate by waving their tails like flags. This species, the Carter's semaphore gecko, goes a step further. The male has an enlarged tail to send clearer signals. The bigger and spinier it is, the more attractive he is to females. With his impressive package, this fella's managed to attract a mate. She's had a growth spurt and has just finished shedding her skin. Rigid scales can't expand, so as a reptile grows, it must shed its skin and grow a new one, with a little room to spare. For any small animals that risk daylight activity, there's the threat of aerial attack. When a flock of ravens turns up, it's time to retreat. The day is almost over on the coast. After 12 hours, the tide eventually returns, releasing the sea snakes from their rock pool prisons. They can finally return to the sea. They immediately begin to hunt, exploring the corals and looking for a suitable target. Like its cousins on land, the sea snake has a forked tongue, but only needs to extend the tips to taste traces of prey in the water. Its bold stripes announce its toxic venom to other marine predators, like hungry sharks, leaving it to hunt undisturbed. It moves with fluidity and grace, now that it's finally back where it belongs. As the day moves on, the temperature slowly drops. For many animals, this is the time to get more active. But not for all of them. Because fission's so important to the chameleons hunting, it's active by day and sleeps by night. So as the sun sinks, it makes its way deeper into the vegetation, looking for a safe spot to sleep, usually hidden under a leaf. The dense foliage will also help incubate it during the cooler night. Some chameleons are known cannibals, which is probably why smaller individuals sleep in different parts of the vegetation than the adults, as they try to stay off the big guy's menu. Once the sun sets, the temperature on the sandy desert drops quickly. By 6 p.m., it's a slightly more comfortable 37 degrees. The dhub has had an evening snack of desert plants while it was cooler. But now he heads inside. Evening is when one of the desert's most notorious killers stirs. A horned viper, armed with potent venom, is ready to hunt. It seeks out a good hideaway, where it can lie in wait to ambush passing prey. A hooded malpolon is also preparing to hunt. Before it begins its night of prowling, it performs a peculiar ritual, a trait shared with very few other species. Known as self-rubbing, it spreads a fatty secretion from its nasal glands along its body. The purpose of this lipid-rich liquid is to seal in moisture so that it's not lost to the warm air. It's a more active predator than the viper and seeks out its victims rather than lying in wait. Rodents have spent the day in their underground burrows to stay cool. But now it's their time to forage for seeds, grasses, or even insects. The malpolon is quick to spot a potential meal. Even well-armed predators can be cautious. They need to pick their victims carefully. From ground level, this gerbil looks pretty big. Like all rodents, it has self-sharpening, chisel-shaped teeth and sharp claws. The snake is only likely to strike if the rodent turns to run, giving the snake a clear shot at its unprotected back. But the gerbil wisely turns to face its attacker. It chooses fight over flight. The snake decides not to risk injury, going in search of easier prey. The mammal wins this one. But thanks to the reptile's cold-blooded efficiency, the malpolon can afford to miss a meal. Creatures tucked up safely in their burrows don't escape the dangers of the night. The Arabian sand boa is like a reptilian mole, perfectly shaped for a life of hunting beneath the sand. Its smooth scales lie flat, and its wedge-shaped head allows it to plow through the dunes. It will lie buried, with only its eyes at the surface, to watch for passing prey, like insects and small lizards. The Persian wonder gecko is an endemic species in Arabia. Like most other geckos, it's nocturnal. With its huge eyes, it can hunt insects by moonlight. Most geckos don't have eyelids and must lick their eyes to keep them clean and free of sand. Most have broad toes for gripping surfaces that they climb. But this desert specialist has replaced the pads with comb-like scales to help it move in the sand. The Persian wonder gecko has only been known to science for 20 years. Little is known about its biology. But we do know that this little lizard is regionally endangered. Habitat loss means it is facing extinction in the wild. The temperature reaches its coolest point in the early hours of the morning, where just the faintest moonlight creates an eerie glow. Both air and surface temperatures have stabilized at a comfortable 25 degrees. Perfect for a sand gecko to hunt. He's on the prowl for insects. The gecko uses its huge eyes, pupils fully dilated, to trap any moonlight. He's not the only hunter on the prowl. The horned viper is also looking for a meal. He hunts by touch. He lacks external ears and can't hear, but the inner ear can detect even the faintest vibrations of prey moving nearby. It knows something is there, but it can't seem to pinpoint it. The gecko has the advantage. It can open its pupils to more than 300 times their smaller size to capture even the weakest light. With its perfect night vision, the gecko can stay one step ahead. The secret lives of reptiles often play out under the cover of darkness. In the early hours of the morning, Arabia's biggest reptile is on a mission. A loggerhead turtle, the largest of 4 endangered species of sea turtles that breed on Arabia's coast. Like all reptiles, sea turtles evolved on land. It was during the reign of the dinosaurs that they expanded their range, conquering the sea itself. Now, sea turtles are totally designed for life underwater. But like all reptiles, their eggs must be laid on land. Females travel vast distances to their breeding beaches, to the exact same spots where they themselves hatched, to dig a hole and deposit their eggs. This female's running late. Turtles usually lay during the cooler night and try to be back in the water before sunrise. But she can't go until she completes her task. She's very precise in the construction of her nest. The depth will determine the temperature of the eggs. She's aiming for 28 to 32 degrees. If she gets it right, the warmer top half of the nest will produce female hatchlings, and the cooler lower half will produce males. If she gets it wrong, the whole clutch will be one sex. With the nest complete, she deposits around 120 eggs. A rubbery tube, called a novipositor, extends from her tail to ensure she puts all her eggs in one basket. The shells are rubbery to cushion their fall. Like most reptiles, she won't play any role in caring for her young. Her final task in motherhood is to delicately bury the clutch. The eggs will hatch in 40 days or so, but her job is done. Now she can return to the sea. She won't set foot on land for 3 or 4 years, when she returns to lay again. As the sun rises, the next shift from the reptile kingdom emerges. Ready to exploit Arabia's gift, the sun and its life-giving energy. As their ancestors have for millennia, they recharge their batteries, ready to face the challenges of a new day. Here, cold-blooded creatures have the upper hand. A land where reptiles rule. In a land of sand, life is tough. It can sink away in an instant. The Arabian Desert is one of the most challenging places on Earth. But the animals here are resilient and specialized. Still, death is never far away. Creatures must seize every opportunity to find food, shelter, and water. Adaptability is the key to life and death in the dunes. One of Arabia's most iconic animals. It's often cited as original inspiration for the wondrous mythical creature, the unicorn. When viewed from the side, the Arabian oryx looks like a large white animal with a single long horn. In fact, it's an antelope, one of the best adapted to a life in the furnace. The dominant oryx bull starts his day looking over his herd. As the sun rises, the group will adapt their behavior to cope with the changing conditions it brings. Oryx typically form small groups of less than a dozen. Any more would put too much pressure on the scant vegetation. There's a strict hierarchy that's enforced with posturing and head gestures. The dominant animals of both sexes use their 60-centimeter horns to make their point. Only the dominant male breeds. This herd bull spends most of his time patrolling. He monitors the females for hormonal changes that signal they are ready to breed. He does so by tasting her urine. He curls his lip, a strange grimace known as flamen, to pull the scent to what's called the Jacobson's organ on the roof of his mouth. With this, he can sense her hormone levels and determine when she'll be ready to mate. She doesn't seem to be ready just yet. The herd has other things to worry about. Their first challenge of the day is to warm up. At night, the temperature only drops to around 20 degrees Celsius. But to creatures built to withstand heat, which can exceed 50 degrees, that feels cold. The oryx turn themselves to stand side-on to the warming sun, exposing as much of their bodies as possible. Though they have white hair to reflect the heat, they're black-skinned underneath and can raise their hair to allow more of the rays to reach the darker, heat-absorbing color beneath. They won't have long to wait. The sun will bake the land in short order. The Arabian Peninsula is the largest peninsula on Earth, over 3 million square kilometers. It's dominated by an array of deadly landscapes. Vast sand dunes roll into dry gravel plains, fringed by desolate rocky hills. This is the Arabian Desert. Hostile and barren, a land seemingly devoid of life. Animals and plants that live here must cope with extremes of temperature, suffocating shifting sand, and an almost complete absence of water. They must also survive each other. Arabia was once part of Africa and covered in lush green plains. 35 million years ago, there was no Red Sea, so animals could freely move back and forth. 10,000 years ago, at the end of the Ice Age, sea levels rose and flooded what is now the Red Sea. Animals were stranded on the Arabian Peninsula, and as the climate changed, the plains dried out. The options were simple: adapt or die. The survivors are now masters of the desert. But even for these hardiest of creatures, life is a constant struggle. Food, water, and shelter are in short supply, especially as the desert turns up the heat. It's only 7 a.m., but the mercury is already in the high 20s. For animals the size of an oryx to survive, they must keep constantly on the move, seeking out every possible opportunity to eat. They'll make a non-stop journey of 120 kilometers or more to get to fresh grazing. There are several youngsters in the group, all sired by the herd bull. Being smaller and more vulnerable doesn't win the calves any favors. They still have to give way to higher-ranking individuals. Now between 2 and 3 months old, they still suckle from their mothers. The young are browner in color than the adults, a useful trait giving them some degree of camouflage against the sand. Other calves in the group are 5 months old. Their brown coats are already fading. They weaned nearly a month ago and scrape a living from whatever desert vegetation they can find. Regardless of their age, the young are expected to keep up. The herd's home range can be 2,500 square kilometers. They never stay in one area for more than a few months to avoid overgrazing. But moving can bring new challenges. The herd has wandered into the territory of a lone bull. Until they can secure a herd, bulls lead a solitary existence, guarding their turf and waiting for available females to pass through. But this group already has its herd bull. For many animals, this would be a certain fight, and their horns are potentially lethal. But for these desert dwellers, there's a far greater threat: the heat. A fight would waste valuable energy, but the lone bull wants the herd. It may be worth a challenge. Posturing, they size each other up. The brief tussle's enough to persuade the loner that it's a fight he can't win. He lets the herd pass through his territory unhindered. It might be a long, tough journey. One of the biggest challenges here is the terrain: sand. This shifting, gritty, irritating topography has shaped one of the desert's most extreme specialists: the sandfish. He's not a fish at all, but a lizard, a type of skink. Like all reptiles, he's cold-blooded and starts his day basking in the sun to warm up. Scientists long thought his stout limbs were tucked against his sides to help him sink under the sand. Recent studies have revealed that they rotate back and forth using the front crawl stroke. He can literally swim through the sand. What's sleek and streamlined beneath the sand looks a lot clumsier on the surface. His short legs give him a distinctive waddle. Most small animals have no choice other than to hide away during the blazing heat of the day. But larger animals have no such luxury. Some of the most famous specialists live out on the rocky plains. Known as the ships of the desert, camels are the ultimate desert survivors. Dromedaries, or one-humped camels, aren't truly wild. They're a domesticated species that now roams free. Fossil evidence suggests that they were domesticated here 4,000 years ago. By 2,000 years ago, their wild ancestors were extinct. Nonetheless, they still have their predecessors' remarkable adaptations that enable them to survive this fierce desert. In the midst of the group is a tiny youngster, just a few weeks old, still showing the last traces of the umbilical cord that once connected him to his mother. Older cousins gather around him. There's no real hierarchy in camel society. Outside the breeding season, females and males live in separate groups. Females with similar-aged calves stay close together so their offspring can socialize. The young are kept in a creche in the middle of the herd for protection. Despite the care, the young male's future is far from assured. With danger from predators, disease, and above all the heat and lack of water, 30% of young camels won't reach their third birthdays. To survive the dangers of the desert, this little guy is on a steep learning curve. By 8 a.m., it's reached a scalding 35 degrees. The temperature will continue to climb. There's another herd on the dunes that has its own adaptations to survive. These are sand gazelles. They get all their water from their food. They must eat 30% of their body weight daily and keep constantly on the move, covering 15 kilometers a day in search of fresh grazing. Even their extreme physiology doesn't guarantee their success. In bad drought years, half the gazelles may perish. The oryx are also experts in conserving water. Their breakfast consists of little more than dry grasses, but there'll be enough moisture in the plants to keep them alive. Their extremely efficient kidneys make sure no water is wasted. They produce ultra-concentrated urine and dry droppings. As humans get hot, we sweat to maintain a constant internal temperature. No matter how hot it gets, oryx won't sweat. They cannot afford to lose the water. Instead, they will allow their internal body temperature to rise to around 39 degrees, while still keeping their brain cool. The excess body heat will dissipate during the cooler night. Oryx are browsers, and plants like this tribulus are a vital source of minerals. Vegetation is sparse, especially here, where there's little but loose sand. Even for plants, life's a day-to-day struggle for survival. Dune grasses are one of the few species to colonize the shifting sand. Their long roots search a large area for water and ensure they catch as much moisture as possible on the rare occasions that it rains. These roots help stabilize the dunes themselves. Thick skins help prevent water loss to evaporation, but they don't protect them from the oryx's battery of tough, grinding teeth. Another challenge for life out in the desert is the lack of cover for hiding. But there are some stealthy specialists. Lying motionless, with her sandy, mottled coat, the sand cat's easy to miss. She looks like a house cat, but is much more reclusive and nocturnal. Seeing one out in the open, especially by day, is extremely rare. She typically spends her days in a cool, underground den, but this morning she's enjoying the fresh air before it gets too hot. The sandcat is the only feline species adapted solely for a life on sand. Her soft, dense fur protects her from the sun's rays and insulates her during the cold night. Her claws are more retracted and blunter than other cats, because she often digs her prey from the sand. The pads on her feet are hairy, to act like snowshoes, keeping her from sinking into the sand. Food resources are scarce, but water is non-existent, so the cat must hunt to obtain moisture from her food. This can be anything from insects to hairs. Like all predators, she spends most of her time sleeping, up to 18 hours a day. Even as she rests, she seems to be dreaming of a hunt. It doesn't take much to wake her. Lizards are her primary prey. Thanks to her hairy feet, she barely leaves footprints and can tiptoe in silence. Warmed by the hot sun, the lizard's turbocharged. She prefers to hunt at night and will return to her den to sleep through the hot day. The air temperature reaches a peak of 50 degrees in the early afternoon. But the sand, having absorbed the morning sun, is much hotter, 65 degrees, hot enough to boil an egg. Even camels struggle. They rarely find enough shade, so sit side by side facing the sun. This way, only their narrow front is exposed directly to the rays, not their broad sides. The little calf learns by copying his mother. To protect their bodies from the scalding heat of the sand, They have thick calluses on their chests, knees, and wrists. They stop the rest of the body from contacting the sand. Camels have thick, curly fur that reflects the heat. The surface of the fur can be hot to the touch, but the covering's so efficient that the skin remains much cooler. Only if their bodies reach 42 degrees, a potentially fatal temperature, will the camel sweat to try and cool down. The oryx have a different technique to beat the heat. Northerly winds are fairly constant here and build during the afternoon. The oryx climb the dunes, exposing themselves to the breeze. The wind's hot, but it's better than nothing. Now their white coats act as reflectors, bouncing back rather than absorbing the sun. They have broad feet to spread their weight, making it easier to walk on the dunes. The hooves also make good shovels, and the antelope can dig to expose a cooler bed of sand, the ideal place to sit. The air they breathe in cools their blood as it travels to their brains, preventing tissue damage from the heat. Once the afternoon temperature has reached its peak, even the oryx must seek shelter. Little gullies in the dunes hold just enough moisture and offer slightly better ground for plant life. An oasis that creates small pockets of shade. The herd male picks the best seat in the house. Everyone else must fit in around him. The calves must still follow herd protocol. Settled in, they'll sit out the afternoon sun. The dunes of the desert have a life of their own. They're always on the move, slowly drifting southeast. Winds are constantly blowing from the northwest, picking up the grains and depositing them again. The ripples follow the direction of these prevailing winds. At their biggest, the dunes can be 100 kilometers long and 3 kilometers wide. The dunes are supported by gravel beds, pebbles that are too big for the wind to shift. The stones were washed out from the surrounding mountains during the Ice Age, when the climate was a lot wetter. The rivers that deposited them have long since dried up. Now sand flows in their place. By 5 p.m., the sun is starting to sink. Temperatures gradually release their grip on the desert. The sandfish emerges from his daytime hideout. Now at a more comfortable temperature, he can hunt. Normally, he uses his sensitive hearing to locate beetle larvae burrowing in the sand. But ants are on tonight's menu. He'll need to be careful. He's not the only reptile around. And some of his neighbors can be deadly. Diagonal tracks, a clue that another predator is nearby. A horned viper moves over the dunes with his body raised, so that only 2 points are ever in contact with the hot sand. The raised dunes give him a chance to absorb the last few rays of sun, to ready himself for the kill. He's an ambush hunter and looks for a place to lie in wait for a target to wander too close. Lizards, birds, and small mammals are his preferred prey. Now in a prime position, he waits for the cover of darkness. At dusk, a new cast of characters comes to life. The Ruppell's fox sleeps in a den to escape the heat of day. But now as it cools off, he's also ready to hunt. Most members of the dog family pant to cool down, but this tiny fox has other options. His huge ears help with heat loss. He loses 55% less water than other mammals of the same size. Like so many here, he gets all his moisture from his food, which can be anything from small mammals to plants. He tiptoes quietly, thanks to long hair covering the pads of his feet. Though it helps him make a quiet approach, their most important role is protecting his pads from the burning sand. Like a bloodhound, he follows his nose. An acute sense of smell brings great rewards. A dead bird is a lucky find. By day, there are only a few species of mammals visible in the desert, but night reveals a far greater diversity. Many have been hiding right beneath the camel's feet. There are 80 species of mammal in Saudi Arabia. Most are rodents. For tiny mammals like this gerbil, the open is a dangerous place. Survival depends on the safety of a burrow. He forages for seeds and grasses, and even the occasional insect. Coming out at night means the gerbil can avoid the sun. But deadly predators roam in the dark. The horned viper's found his ambush spot. He's coiled and ready to strike. He can detect the vibrations of the approaching prey, feeling its movements as he lines up his attack. He can taste its scent with his forked tongue. After injecting his lethal venom, the viper retreats. Death comes quickly. Prey of this size is usually dead within 90 seconds. The snake will stay out of the way of its sharp claws and teeth, until its victim is helpless. The bones of its lower jaw don't actually dislocate. They aren't fused together at all. The point where they meet at the front and where they connect with the skull at the back is supported by stretchy ligaments. The viper eats the gerbil head first, so that its limbs fold neatly against its body and don't catch in the snake's throat. He tries to do this as quickly as possible, because with his mouth full, he could be vulnerable to other predators. It might take half an hour to swallow the gerbil and several days to digest it. At night, insects are also more active. Now that the temperatures drop to a more comfortable 30 degrees, dehydration is less of a threat. Like the gerbil, their chance of running into a predator increases. A Ruppell's fox uses its keen hearing and sense of smell to locate a meal. The fox patrols a large territory, around 70 square kilometers, so there can be a lot of walking to find food. But persistence pays off. A large locust is a protein-packed meal. By 6 a.m., light begins its return to the dunes, and heat is on the rise. As usual, there's a changeover in the animal community. Surviving rodents retreat to their burrows. The day shift begins once more. The sandfish is cautious as he looks for a safe spot to bask and warm up. But this morning he doesn't need to worry. After its huge meal, the horned viper is resting and realigning its jaws. He needs to sit in a safe spot and digest his prey. As he warms up, he'll process his meal more efficiently. Thanks to strong enzymes in his stomach, he'll be able to digest the entire gerbil except for its hair and claws, which he'll excrete. As the sun climbs towards the middle of the day, the weather conditions slowly change. Warm winds are constantly shifting the desert sands, molding and moving the dunes. During the summer afternoons, areas of high pressure intensify the breeze. The ingredients for the perfect storm. The bank of cloud is a sign of trouble. The high pressure stirs the winds, getting more of the fine particles airborne. a common but deadly threat arises. A sandstorm. For the inexperienced, it could be a death sentence. It would be easy to get lost in the darkness, blinded by the sharp particles, or suffocated as sand fills the lungs. But desert specialists have their coping mechanisms. Camels can squint into the storm thanks to large bushy eyebrows and long lashes that protect their eyes. They can close their nostrils to prevent inhaling sand. Luckily, most sandstorms blow over quickly. Sometimes the desert's far less forgiving. Beneath one of the nearby trees is a reminder of just how fragile life can be. The bones of a young camel. Even ships of the desert can sink. The desert can be devastating, but destruction can also bring opportunity. The storms brought down an acacia. The crumbly, sandy soil wasn't enough to anchor the tree. Even for plants, death is ever present. But the tree's loss is the camel's gain. Camels specialize in eating the least edible of plants. Their thick, rubbery lips act like fingers to pick up tiny leaves and bark from around large thorns. Like all ruminants, or animals that chew the cud, they don't have teeth in the front of their upper jaw. Instead, the lower incisors nip against a tough palate. It's like a pair of pruning shears with a blade cutting against a flat surface. The incisors strip bark from the fallen branches. Even the toughest woody material can be ground down by a battery of powerful molars in the back of the jaws. The food will be partly digested and then brought back up for a second chewing to absorb as many of the nutrients as possible. The gorging camels stir up insects that were hiding in the vegetation. Among them, a master of disguise. A female striped or devil's flower mantis. 6 centimeters of killer instinct. She's a stealth predator. She creeps forward, rocking her body back and forth as though blown by a breeze, adding realism to her leafy disguise. The name praying mantis comes from the folded arms, which seem to be held up in prayer. But this isn't an act of repose. Her weapons are concealed. Her claws can be swung forwards with incredible speed, pinning her insect prey against the spine-lined arms. But despite her weaponry, she's not immune to attack. For a predatory bird, like the sharp-beaked shrike, the mantis could become a meal. she cautiously retreats. But these avian hunters are also hunted. The flocking featherweights don't go unnoticed by the sandcat. With so many pairs of eyes watching, it's hard to sneak up. The camels ignore the community around them. They need to eat as much as they can while the going's good. The hump of a camel stores fat. When food's abundant, its body produces the fat and strong fibrous connective tissue to hold it in place. Most animals store fat on their bodies, but fat's an insulator and would cause a desert animal to overheat. By storing it in the hump, it doesn't interfere with the camel's ability to stay cool. It's a survival backpack. When the animal falls on hard times, it can metabolize the fat, producing both energy and water. The young camel barely has a hump at all. It will take a while to build up good reserves. In the height of summer, even the adults are low on supplies. Their humps have diminished, a reminder that resources in the desert can be few and far between. They must always restock when they can. While the adults feed, the young play. They are necking and nipping. But these little guys won't be engaging in true sexual behavior for at least 6 years. So they have plenty of time to perfect their act. The oryx have been trekking all day, as the temperature's risen around them. By late afternoon, their endurance pays off. The storms brought with them light rains, something oryx are capable of detecting from as much as 80 kilometers away. The water's long gone. It's evaporated or drained through the sand. But the plants have trapped some. Moisture-rich vegetation is worth traveling for. The Arabian oryx was once hunted to the brink of extinction. It was only captive breeding and release that saved the species. Today, a mere 1,000 roam wild in the desert. Though their numbers have stabilized, they're still considered vulnerable. Even with protection from hunting, their survival hangs in the balance. They're at the mercy of the environment and must trudge every day to eke out their living. Not all of them will make it. The harsh environment claims around 40% of the calves before they reach maturity. So far, this herd's doing well. The fresh vegetation is a welcome feast. Even the youngest calf is having his first nibble. In a few weeks, he'll be on his own. He needs to use this time to watch and learn, to master finding food and moisture and beating the heat. He needs to be ready for a life on the dunes.